Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joe Szymanski. The guy to the right of me is Palmer Johnson. This is the Onward to Victory podcast, sponsored by Giant Killer, your one-stop shop for all things George Mason basketball. Palmer, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Not only did Mason kick off their A10 conference play with two wins, but because of a Tuesday night game next week, we've got three games to talk about this week for upcoming for the Patriots at Palmer. Let's start with the good. Mason 2-0 to start conference play.
Yeah, it's LaSalle was a really shaky game, but it's hard to win on the road. And the last 10 minutes, they were just dominant. 23-9 the last 10 minutes. Uh, Anga that was his best game by a lot, I think. 17 points, 7 for 8, 8 rebounds in 18 minutes. Uh, that's a freshman. We say that every time Anga does anything, like that's a freshman. Uh, that was really good. Well, the game was fine. You're okay with the game. I think because they handled Rhode Island, you're a lot more okay with it.
Yes. Yes, certainly. If I think just to kind of stick on the LaSalle game right now,
Mm.
maybe it felt I wasn't able to watch a whole lot of it. I was in Allentown for much of the afternoon on the day on New Year's Eve, but certainly maybe some injuries, some health surprises. I think for LaSalle, maybe some guys who were listed as questionable who ended up actually playing in the game. Jerome Brewer and Jaden, I believe it was Jaden Marshall or it was one of either Jaden. It was one of the Jadens, Jaden Marshall or Jaden Johnson. One of those two.
Who's Johnson? That
Yeah,
was his
Jaden
first game of the
Johnson.
year. First game of the year.
Brewer and Johnson, neither, both were listed as questionable coming into the game. Both ended up playing. Neither necessarily have a whole lot of tape on either of them. I actually believe that was Johnson's first game of the year on
Yeah,
New Year's Eve. Obviously, Jerome Brewer has been in and out for them as well with injury this season. But it felt like Mason, particularly in the first half, was caught off guard. But we've said it time and time again this year, Palmer, and I think throughout the entirety of Tony Skinn's coaching tenure of George Mason. This is a second half. This is a second half team. This is a coach that makes excellent adjustments at halftime, and it didn't necessarily pay off right away. But you look at the kind of those final 10 minutes there of the game on New Year's Eve, Palmer, 23-9 in favor of the Patriots in what is basically the fourth quarter of that game, Palmer. That was just really nice to see after a couple of games there of real defensive struggles, is even in late game situations.
yeah. I mean, it stinks that the first 30 minutes were so bad, but the last 10 being that good is like, okay, you figured it out. If you're gonna pick one of the 10-minute segments to be really good in, I'm glad it's the fourth.
Yeah. And you got to give, a lot of props here. Riley Allenstock was expected to have a good game coming in. He had a good game. Solid game from Jahari Long. But, I mean, we already talked about Conga. Of course, huge game for him, 17-8. I think most importantly, especially in what's only will end up being a 5-point win, Palmer, Conga 3 of 3 from the free throw line.
Mm-hmm. That's big.
That's just a big thing right there. But I think we've talked about the forward position, the power forward spot. I think since the start of the season, Palmer. I think undeniably it's been the biggest reason for George Mason. Obviously, Dole Adebayo, who's had ups and downs this entire season. He's missed the last couple games with a foot injury. Mason continued to kind of struggle to fill that role. Finally, we joked about it. Stas Sivka was kind of finally broken out for an extended period of time during this game, 12 minutes on the day. You kind of track his minutes. It felt like the defense immediately improved once Stas was in there.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it, when Mason had a big man at like a true, like, center at the 4, like a, uh, Konga or Ellington, that the three-point defense was struggling, and then when they put Presley at the 4 or Troutman at the 4, then now the two-point defense struggled, and they put Sivka in there, it's like, well, this just fixes everything.
And Stas, I mean, he won the game in reality there, Palmer. That last tip in the last minute kind of made it an unbreakable 5-point lead there for the Patriots. It felt like kind of just like the kick-starting moment for all things Stas Sivka, just to kind of get that tip in there. Also, I think combined with the offensive sensibilities there, that we've been, we talk about player development just isn't really a thing. It feels like in this day and age of college basketball, that right there, that is the player development that I think you hope from a guy who's now been with your program basically for 18 straight months because he didn't head back to Slovenia during the summertime. He was there in Fairfax working in the gym.
Yeah, I mean, it's too common now that a guy plays at a level, goes to a level for a freshman year, doesn't play, and he's like, I guess I gotta go move down. It's like, no, 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 you could have stayed there. Stay there for another year and see what happens. But
Yeah.
I'm glad it's working out here. It's been only been a couple major games, but it's kind of like I have to imagine it's not like it's not like he's staying in the lineup because of some fluke shooting. Like him shooting well helps, but he's out there for his defense.
Yes, yes, and we'll obviously this rolls right into the Rhode Island game this past Saturday, Palmer. You know what? Of all the games so far played this year, Palmer, this is the one that reminded me the most of a game from last season of last year's George Mason team. Very much kind of a bully ball rock fight type of game, 61-50 with a final score. Mason with one of their best defensive performances in a while, taking advantage of a roadie offense that's really struggled the last couple of weeks partly due to health, partially it just seems to be that teams are kind of figuring them out a little bit. We're not just George Mason fans, we're A10 fans, Palmer. At one point maybe we'd go into what this could mean for Archie Miller. Obviously, he's one of two head coaches in the Atlantic 10 that we're not talking about moving on because he's going to move on to a better job. We're talking about moving on because he might be terminated early from his contract here. But just to look at this Mason team, not their best offensive game, obviously. Only 11 of 28 from two. But this was a Rhode Island team that came in one of the stronger 2-point defense teams in the country. They've kind of built. I know you kind of said it in your pregame article write up, Palmer. This is a team under Archie Miller that kind of finally does feel like it has an identity, and it is definitely in their 2-point defense.
Yeah, their identity used to be have an okay offense to get shredded defensively, and now they have an okay offense and defend the two very well. It's like, okay, you're doing something. Thank you for doing something.
And also one of the better turnover, not just one of the better, I should say, one of the best turnover
Yes.
ratios on defense. 22.7% currently on KenPom for turnover percentage on defense. That puts them at sixth in the country, Palmer.
Yeah, I mean that's a really big thing. I mean, because those turnovers, I don't know if you noticed, a lot of them are steals, and
Yes.
that turns into points, which actually makes you more question like how is offense this bad even with these steals? But uh, I mean the turnovers, Mason had less turnovers than Rhode Island this game. It was 13-9, and that's just how it is having kind of two. I mean, pretty much most lineups have 2 point guards in it with
Yep.
Mincy and Charlie Long, and that's just not something that Mason usually has.
And I mean, we talked about this through the first couple, even going into the last year of Kim English, kind of those 3 years there. Mason really struggled with turnovers, or not necessarily were the greatest at keeping the ball safe. You have to give Tony's good and the coaching staff a lot of credit this year. That was something they talked about at the end of the season. That was something they wanted to improve upon from their guard position, improve that turnover metric there. You look at the Patriots so far this season. The turnover percentage this year for the Patriots on offense is a 14.5%. That's 34th in the country, and the steal percentage, Palmer, is 7.7%. That's good for 32nd in the country. Certainly, what's allowed the Patriots to win some of these tight games, maybe some of those that haven't been shouldn't be tight, when the defense isn't working as well. Some of the last couple of weeks, what's allowed them to avoid some of these stunners, Palmer, I think has been very blatantly their ability to keep control of the ball.
I I think a big thing is Mason's bigs all have really good hands. So these entry passes that are kind of risky, in the past, those balls are going. They're either hitting a defender's hands and going away, or they're hitting the center's hands and just falling to the floor, and then somebody else gets it and runs. Uh, I think that really helps when. Uh, I mean, Mason had some games last year where it's like, wow, I won't say his name, but a certain center hasn't caught a ball. It's what are they under 4 timeout? He hasn't caught a ball yet. This is crazy. And I mean, Conga, great hands. Allen Spot, great hands. Ellington still has good hands. Nobody has hands that are a problem.
No,
So
nobody
you
has
might,
problematic catching.
Yes. So I feel like any of the turnovers are generally like on the actual pass and not the catch, and that's just taking out one big factor.
That's absolutely, and that's true. I mean, that limits that limits rushes, that limits, those type of fast breaks that we like to see. Teams have been able to capitalize on Mason before, but this was the Stas Sivka game, Palmer. This was the Stas Sivka game. I believe were you in attendance for this one on Saturday,
Yes.
Palmer? You were there.
Yes.
Uh, the thing with Stas, he's one of two returners, and the other returner isn't healthy yet. So, what was the crowd reaction like being in that stadium, seeing someone who maybe even some members or some not as deeply devoted fans, right, seeing Stas out there and seeing him perform well? What was the crowd reaction like to that?
Uh, so generally what happens when Stas hits his first shot is everybody goes crazy because it's Stas and that somebody, I think because, his name is Stas Sivka, it's like that's a name you're gonna remember. It isn't
Mm-hmm.
it isn't Jordan Jones, it's Stas Sivka. You remember that name if
Yep.
you've been to a past game of his. Uh, the crowd kind of goes crazy. And then it's like, man, that was fun. Okay, well, that's all we expect to happen. And then when he hits the second one, it's like, oh wow. And then when he keeps hitting, I mean, he hit three threes, 3-2. I mean, he scored 17. Stas, I think he had 18 coming into the game. So doubled his points in a game. The crowd just went crazy, and I'm kind of sad. Uh, so he hit I think believe two threes in the first half, and
Mm-hmm.
they got taken out during a media timeout. And then next time he went in, which was 18 minutes left in the second half. He didn't go out,
He
which
did
was
not leave.
awesome, but he didn't get his subbed out standing ovation,
Yeah.
which I was a little disappointed in.
I mean, you look at the stat line though here, Palmer. 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting, great. 6 boards, 2 assists, a block and 2 steals, which I think all the block and 2 steals I think came with like the first 5 minutes of him coming on when he also hit those 2 threes, which that could go down as I think no matter how this season continues on here, Palmer could be one of my favorite moments of the season there. It could be one of my favorite kind of grouping moments there, but certainly huge game from him. Strong game from Corey Mincy as well. 4 assists as well as from 9 points. Fat Hill 6 of 6 from the line. You're not gonna necessarily always get that from Fat, knowing his kind of streakiness there, but you'll take that. Conga really good again. I would have been in double digits if he could have hit his three throws a little bit better. Only 4 9 from the line, but that's the ebbs and flows of a rookie. But really, the defense was the one that took center stage against Rhode Island. It seemed like the game plan, especially when Stops in the game, really worked to perfection.
Yeah, I mean, Stas, as good as his offensive numbers looked, I feel like his defense was better, which is crazy to say. Uh, he got switched on to one of the guards. I don't remember who it was. I'm just gonna guess it was. I don't know who it was, but he stayed in front of him, and I'm like, wow, some guards don't do that. Like, I remember when I was watching him in Slovenia, I'm like, this guy moves really well on the
Mm-hmm.
perimeter. It's like this guy shouldn't be moving. Like, I see why somebody found him is this guy is pretty raw, but 6'10" and moves really fast, and you can figure out how to use that. And looks like Mason has, and that's just
Yeah,
huge.
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. But Palmer, obviously, that ended up 61-50 win. Mason is 2-0 after the first week of conference play. You always love to be in that position, but it's an intriguing week, a week and a half here. We're doing 3 games just because of the Tuesday set next week. But we'll start with Wednesday. It'll be tomorrow by the time this podcast is released. Mason heads up to the Bronx to play Fordham. A not so fun fact, Palmer. Mason is 1-7 all time at Rose Hill in the Bronx away at Fordham. Not necessarily a stat you'll love to see, but if there's one thing that Tony Skin has been very good at since coming to George Mason is that he loves breaking those old curses. He's done quite a lot of it in his time. He's won at a lot of tough places. He's won at Dayton. He's won at St. Bonaventure. He's won at St. Louis. He's won in some of the places that are considered some of the toughest to win in the Atlantic 10. But this is a tough, and again, we've jokingly called it the terrorist defense before, Palmer. This is another Fordham team that plays rock heavy defense, especially in the paint.
Yeah, I mean, it was annoying the past couple of years watching where the Fordham defense is just value, and sometimes they don't call it. They usually do, but sometimes they don't. So 1 to 4 games, we're just gonna beat you up. Uh, Luckily, this Fordham defense. I mean, I'm sorry, I haven't watched. It's Fordham.
Yeah, why would you watch
I haven't
Fordham?
watched,
I've watched
but
nothing of Fordham.
but they have the ninth lowest foul or free throw rate on defense in the country. So I'm just gonna assume that they're like playing real defense now, uh, and it's a little scary. I'm a little scared because they stunk early in the year. I mean, they lost at home to NGIT, lost at home to Holy Cross, but since that Holy Cross game, they've been a really good defensive team. I mean, up until their game against Richmond, they were giving up less than a wait, yeah, they're giving up a point per possession or less, which wins you a lot of basketball games.
Sure.
So
Absolutely, absolutely. I've kind of looked at it, though. You look at the numbers here, Palmer. This seems like almost a defensively weaker version of Rhode Island a little bit, where this is a team with a very, very good 2 point defense, but not as good as Rhodey's, and a 3 point defense that's actually a little bit worse than Rhode Island's.
yeah, their defense kind of scares me. It's a 2 game sample size, one of which is against Dayton with no centers.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even know what to do with that game. But
That's
uh,
I've been struggling with that too.
yeah, like I don't know what to say about that game. But I mean, they the opponents are shooting 48.6% from three against them in their 2 conference games, but they're also taking the second least amount of twos in the conference. So it's kind of like, if you get a three off, it's probably a pretty good shot, but you're not getting a lot of threes off.
Yeah,
And it's just
Richmond
kind
though,
of,
13 of 19 from three
yeah. And
against Fordham.
Richmond, if I'm mistaken, yeah, Richmond's okay. Never mind. They're a really good shooting team. Never mind. Is it Dayton? Okay, they're both really good shooting teams. So I guess they're just kind of both had good nights or good days. Uh, it's it's a team that's built kind of scary because you just don't know what's going to happen. Because like I said, they were pretty bad, and then they lost 2 players. Uh, one of which was supposed to be their best player, in Tariq Nutter, and they just kind of turned the defense up. Now I hope Mason can break that, but it's a bit spooky.
It is a little bit spooky whenever you go to Rose Hill. It's a tough place to play, especially on a sleepy winter Wednesday night in the Bronx, where that place is not going to be particularly full, if we're being honest here, Palmer. But you do kind of look at it a little bit here. I think maybe potentially you look at some of the potential weaknesses under first year head coach Mike Pio, kind of actually similar to I think the issue that I think a lot of first year head coaches, even in the transfer portal era, are having, and it is concerns about depth. I think that's probably the big thing here. Obviously, Fordham missing, it looks like, 2 guys potentially, Roar Acker and Abbas Bodija, the 2 freshmen, taller guys. Acker, a 6'7" wing. Uh, Bodija, a 6'10" power forward. Uh, both have played significant minutes at points this year. Both have missed the last 2 games, I believe. Both were listed. I think this is pretty important as well, Palmer. Both were listed as purely out for both games.
Mhm.
Neither got listed as questionable. So that you would think that would make them seemingly unlikely to play on Wednesday. You never know, but let's assume that's the case. You've got a Fordham rotation, especially like you mentioned, Tariq Nutter, no longer part of the team. You've got a rotation that's basically 7 players, and quite honestly, you look at the Richmond box score. Louis Lesmond, their 6'6" senior wing, who's from France, transferred over from Harvard, has not really done anything. I believe he is 2 of 21 from three on the season. Yes,
Yeah,
he is, which is not good. So in reality, you seemingly have 6 players active and ready for Fordham. And Rika Schultz, DeJour Reeves, Akira Jacobs, Jack Whitborn, Marcus Green, and Christian Henry are kind of the 6 that are going to, you're going to see the most out of here. Reeves and Henry are the scorers. Schultz and Whitborn are the big guys. The Jacobs and Green are kind of the defensive stoppers here. But like you said, this is a scary team. But I think it looks like a key to victory here for me, Palmer. Can Mason wear down this? It seems like a very short Fordham bench with their depth.
Yeah, I think, well, they really should be. They should be able to. Uh, I kind of hope Mason plays some kind of, uh, I hope they kind of press a little more than they normally do because it's kind of, like Mason's eighth best man is better than Fordham's eighth best player. And I think it's a lot.
Mhm.
I mean, it's it's rough for Fordham. As you said, like it happens to a lot of first year coaches. I'm not sure it was his fault because he got the job kind of late.
Yeah.
Didn't they weren't they kind of publicly hiring somebody else and then they
Yeah,
didn't get
so
that guy?
so the Fordham, if we want to get into this, the Fordham hiring process this year, they went for Kamani Young first, struck out there. Then Kent State's coach Rob Senderoff was reportedly agreed to a contract, and then he backed out at the last second. So, and we don't. There's rumors that I forget who it was, but there was rumors that there was someone else was in talks before Senderoff, and then that didn't go well. So Magpie was the third or fourth choice, and he was hired, like you said, he was hired later in March compared to when they kind of surprisingly fired Keith Ergo a little bit, especially considering he's only 2 years removed from that unusually good season Fordham had back in the 22-23 season. But this is just a really he's a good coach. Magpie never had overarching success, but it turned UC Riverside into I would say a respectable program. After a couple of years of struggling there, he did a good job with Riverside. Consistent top 150 Ken Palm finishes, but never really getting over the hump there in the Big West, which is not an easy league to break out of if you're not kind of in that circle of mid. But moving on, though, it's like this is a short Fordham bench. That's what you're going to have to hope for. And hopefully Mason, though, is not overlooking Fordham for the game this upcoming Saturday, Palmer. It's a game that Mason fans have probably all circled on their calendars since the schedule released. January 10th, noontime at Eagle Bank Arena on ESPNU. George Mason versus VCU. It's the game, Palmer. It's the game for this part of the season, for this early part of conference play.
Yeah, I mean this is the game. Like this is Mason has not beat VCU in Eagle Bank since I was in middle school, and I
That's not
graduated
good.
last year. Yeah, that's bad. So I mean, I feel like this is kind of Mason's best. I thought last time they played was a pretty good chance, and it just kind of didn't happen. But I think this is a pretty good chance too. I mean, VCU's good, but they're not a world beater. This is I didn't hate the Martelli pick, but I mean, it's not the home run that VCU's used to getting. Where oh no, uh, it's
I would say the really interesting thing about VCU this year, too, Palmer, and I don't think necessarily maybe Mason Nation understands this. This is not even under the Odom era where we're supposed to bring in like this new era of offense. VCU has been defined by their defense for the last 2 decades. This is not that team, Palmer. This is a VCU team that has been defined by their offense.
yeah, and that's what makes me think Mason has a decent chance in this game. Because in the past their defense is just so overwhelming that you give up free offense because of it. How many times did they get a steal or deflection and then transition three and oh no, that's 12. The game's over. Uh, I think that's just they kind of lack that kill shot that Mason would have, or that past VCU teams would have. And man, this is I feel like they don't have the guy. Tyrell Ward was supposed to be the guy, and he's just been a guy. Uh,
He hasn't
they have,
played the last 2 games.
yeah,
And
and
you, I mean, let's not underrate them necessarily, though, Palmer. Terrence Hill, the sophomore guard coming off the bench, has been very good, shooting 44% from three on high volume. Jadrian Tracy, the transfer from Oregon, who was kind of expected to be one of these guys, he's shooting 39% on high volume from three. Lazar Djokovic, very excellent athletic big man, over 64% from the field. He will be a problem to contain in the paint. Uh, Maybe a little bit of disappointment in Barry Evans. I don't think he's been as efficient maybe as maybe was hoped, especially from 3-point range, but he's a very strong physical player from the four. Nick Lewis, a talented freshman guard, playing the undersized two. Brandon Jennings, you remember from last year, he's taken a step forward this year offensively. But you are kind of right. It doesn't feel like necessarily have like a Shulga or a Highland or a Baldwin. Someone who you're going to say that guy's going to win A10 Player of the Year, or that guy could just take over the game. Hill is the closest thing they have to that. You can't let Terrence Hill get hot. Virginia Tech did, and it really just did cost him the game. We talk about just kind of like, oh, it's a 50-point lead. That's what happened to Virginia Tech in the Bahamas and Atlantis. Uh, but it is different in that the defense is not overwhelming. This is a quick offense. They like to run, they like to get to the paint, and they like to score. But this defense, especially over the last month in particular, has struggled. Obviously, they took care of business against American and Ryder, but you look at those two games, American getting 83 points on this defense. You have Ryder, who's one of the worst offensive teams in the country, getting 79 points on VCU. Now, obviously, VCU countered that by scoring 103 points and 100 points, respectively, against those two teams, Palmer. But that does kind of signal some of the defensive challenges that VCU has seen. It was very rare at all in NAIA history to see VCU go basically 4 straight games by giving up 80 points. The Ryder of the game, they gave up 79. But like I said, in basicality, that's 4 straight games where the average points they've given up is above 80, which is not what we're used to seeing from VCU.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is there's no annoying rim protector. That's crazy because they had Bamboye last year. I mean, they just always had felt like seven rim protectors were like, oh, this guy has 3 fouls. Oh no, there's a guy coming behind him. I mean, if you look at their average 2-point distance, the new KenPom stat, they're they're not great at rim deterrence. Average 2-point distance is 0.4 feet closer to the basket than average. And that's just, I mean, you don't want shots at the basket, and they're
And
kind
you
of
do
giving up shots at
wonder
the
how
basket.
much they're missing Christian Furman,
Yeah,
who's out for personal reasons, so you really have no idea what's going on there with him. But really, neither Djokovic, while talented offensively, is not necessarily the most physically imposing big man, and neither really is his backup, Tyshawn Mitchell, who's been more of kind of a true kind of potential 3-level scoring focused guy than maybe the defensive guy maybe some fans are hoping for coming into the season.
yeah, there's just not a guy that's really going to stop everybody at the rim, and that just
Yeah.
makes me feel a lot better.
It makes it a very interesting game for Mason. And like I said, though, Palmer, we're covering 3 games this week. The ticking time bomb in Chicago. On Tuesday, the 13th, Mason will make the travel to Gentile Arena to play on CBS Sports Network, Palmer. It's weird to keep seeing all these nationally televised games for George Mason, Palmer, but I certainly appreciate it. But they head to Gentile Arena, Loyola Chicago. Obviously, this has not been the season they've wanted. Loyola Chicago has lost at home to Mercyhurst, Northern Illinois, and worst of all, by 9 points to Chicago State, Palmer. Now, you look at the performances since Xavier Amos came into play. They're 2-2, including a pretty stunning upset of Santa Clara on a neutral site location, as well as in a win at Rhode Island. Now, people will point, they played Dayton very well at home. You made the point earlier, Dayton has no healthy big men right now, which is kind of Loyola's only positive outset with Miles Rubin and Xavier Amos. And they blew that game horrifically. So I think there's a real question of which are we going to see the Loyola Chicago team of the last couple of weeks? Or is this kind of a facade and we're going to see the team that lost to Mercyhurst, Northern Illinois, and Chicago State in the non-con?
I don't know, because it's the A10. I feel like they just kind of step it up in the conference play because that's what happens. As you said, turn to that ticking time bomb who goes off against random people. Uh, if you go on Torvik has a thing where you can look at teams on certain spans,
Mm-hmm.
and if you go since December 20th when they played Santa Clara, they're the 50th best team on Torvik, which is
That's concerning.
that's a little concerning. Now the Dayton game, I mean they lost by 2, and as you said, no centers for Dayton, but it's still like, I mean they would have lost that game. I mean they lost, they lost crazy games early in the season, so it's just clearly they're a different team. No, we don't know if they're going to stay that different team. I'm leaning towards yes. I'm really worried that this team's going to randomly go 10-8. Drew Valentine gets Coach of the Year, and then it's like, wow, you just killed any chance of an at-large of anybody.
Yeah, certainly that team that's a worry. But you look at this team, one of their biggest weaknesses, Palmer, not only on the defensive side of the 3-point shooting, but on the offensive side as well. This is not a team that protects from the beyond the arc or gets points from beyond the arc very well. Cade Dotson is their best shooter at 36% on the year. Everyone else who has shot conceivable numbers of baskets is at 34% or lower, Palmer. That seems to kind of really track with the struggles that Loyola Chicago's had this season.
Yeah, the shooting, that system needs shooting, and there isn't. And if you have Miles Rubin, who pretty good defender, maybe hasn't taken a
Efficient
step
2-point
up.
getter.
Yeah, efficient 2-point getter. You kind of want to, like, not a Duro level where you like just surround him with 4 shooters and see what happens, but you can't. You're not getting the max. You're not maximizing Miles Rubin if he has to actually do stuff on offense, instead of just, oh, I need. There's 4 shooters on the court. I'm getting a 1-on-1.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Ruben hasn't taken the step up you hoped he'd take, because he's always been on that. Is this an NBA player list? You know, this guy,
Yes.
is this guy,
Yeah.
is this guy an NBA
Who is
player?
this guy?
And then, fortunately, he just kind of hasn't. I feel like he's kind of been the same player for 3 years, and yeah, I mean, he's not fouling anymore, which is actually, I didn't know that. He's committing 2.7 fouls per 40, which is crazy considering he was committing 6 2 years ago. But I mean, yeah, this is just not a. This team doesn't do anything. You know what I mean? They started to do things. Their defense has played really well in conference play, but I don't know how real it is, and I really hope it isn't real.
Yeah, you have no idea. You've got an offensively challenged roadie team who might be one of the worst offenses in or the worst offense in the A10 as it looks right now, and the Dayton team with no centers. So we've got no idea really, but it will be a fun time anyway. It'll be a challenge as always, and like you said about the LaSalle game, Palmer, any win on the road in conference play is a good win. But it'll be an really, really interesting 3-game stretch. You'll see both me and Palmer at the VCU game on the 10th. I'm excited for it, Palmer. I hope we see Mason being 3-0. I'm sure even though we'll be watching Mason versus Fordham, we might have a second screen available for St. Louis at VCU that very same night. That'll be a critical matchup in the A10. But for now, that's all we've got from the Onward to Victory podcast. I'm Joe Szymanski. He's Palmer Johnson. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.